Hello everyone, Laffy here. Today we'll be talking about the most brutal and truly horrific events of World War II. This won't just be a story about battles and politics. These are human tragedies, cruelty that still sends shivers down your spine. Be prepared, some facts will sound like pure horror, but they are all reality. 1. The Holocaust, a death factory. One of the most horrific and monstrous crimes of the war is the Holocaust. Nazi Germany created an entire system of death camps, such as Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Sobibor, where millions of people were exterminated simply for belonging to the wrong nation or group. Over 1 million people died at Auschwitz, mostly Jews, but also Poles, Roma, and Soviet prisoners of war. People were herded into gas chambers, under the misconception that they were showers. After death, the bodies were burned in crematoria. It was a death conveyor belt, where a person ceased to be an individual, just a number. An atmosphere of despair, the smell of burning, endless screams, a true nightmare come true. 2. Human experiments. Another horrific chapter is medical experiments. At the Dachau concentration camp and especially at Auschwitz, doctors of death, like Joseph Mengele, conducted horrific experiments. People were infected with fatal diseases, their bodies' reactions to cold, heat, and lack of oxygen were tested. Twins were tortured for genetic research. One of the most horrific practices was injecting chemicals directly into children's eyes to change the color of their irises. These experiments were so cruel that even decades later, their descriptions evoke horror and incomprehension, as doctors turned into executioners. 3. The Nanjing Massacre. Now let's move on to Asia. In 1937, when Japan captured the Chinese city of Nanjing, a true hell broke loose. Over the course of 6 weeks, Japanese troops killed, according to various estimates, between 200,000 and 300,000 people. Women were raped en masse, often right in front of their families. People were killed publicly, by mass shootings and bayonet attacks. Photographs and eyewitness accounts are so horrific that they were banned for decades. It was a true horror story on the city streets, a man-made apocalypse. 4. The Siege of Leningrad. For 872 days, almost 2.5 years, the city of Leningrad was surrounded by German troops. People died of hunger, cold, and disease. In the winter of 1941-42, the daily bread ration was only 125 grams. Bread was made from cake, sawdust, and anything else that could be found. Cases of cannibalism were officially recorded. People ate glue, leather belts, and books. According to the most conservative estimates, about 1 million civilians perished. The silence of the streets, dead bodies in snowdrifts, children's diaries, all of this makes the siege one of the most horrific chapters of World War II. 5. Mass executions in Katyn and other villages. The Nazis used terror against civilians in Belarus, Poland, and Ukraine. Hundreds of villages were destroyed along with their inhabitants. The most famous tragedy is the village of Katyn in Belarus. In the spring of 1943, a punitive detachment herded all the inhabitants into a barn and set it on fire. Those who tried to escape were shot. Only a few people from the entire village survived. Such scenes were repeated hundreds of times. It is a true horror story on the scale of villages wiped off the face of the earth. 6. The Bataan Death March. In 1942, the Japanese captured tens of thousands of American and Filipino soldiers in the Philippines. They were forced to march nearly 100 kilometers in the scorching sun, without food or water. Those who collapsed from exhaustion or thirst were killed on the spot. Along the way, soldiers were beaten and tortured. According to various estimates, between 10,000 and 15,000 people died. Imagine an endless column of people dying step by step, with no hope of rescue. 7. Hiroshima and Nagasaki. August 1945. The United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In an instant, tens of thousands of people were vaporized. The city was reduced to a blazing ruin. People with charred skin wandered the streets like living shadows. Many died painfully over the course of days and weeks from radiation. This was the first and only time in history that atomic weapons were used against civilians. Hiroshima became a symbol of the horror that progress can bring. World War II was not just a battle between armies. It was a war against people, against humanity itself. Mass murder, Camps, famine, experiments, the atomic bomb, all these are real events that remind us how terrible the world can be when humanity is relegated to the background. Cherish the memory of those who perished, and do everything possible to ensure such a thing never happens again. This was Laffy. If you found this video interesting, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. There are many more stories worth hearing.